This may seem like an ordinary rock, but to me, it has a lot of sentimental value. You see, back in 1967, our family took a trip across the country to California and back, and this is the only memento I have left of that trip. This, a lot of great memories. There's a saying that the greatest gift a parent can give to their children is wonderful memories. This trip was one of many such great memories. So I hope you enjoyed listening to this story about our trip out west told by my parents. California.
The trip to California was going to be expensive, and the funny part of that was I went into my boss and told him I'm going on vacation, and he said, well, how long? And I said, for 5.5 weeks. Well, he nearly fell out of his chair. He never heard of anyone. But I had saved up enough annual leave planning for it. And he sort of said, yeah, but your work, your cases that are due. And I said, I'm 2 months ahead in all categories. He says, even amended cases? Yeah, I said, yeah. He said, because you had a 60-day turnaround. And the minute it came in, it went out. So we said, okay, you can go. And we decided to buy a big Sears cabin tent, which we could all sleep in. It had about an 8-foot, maybe even higher center, but it was basically a cabin shaped with folded, rolled down sides, which had screens then, and we could all sleep in, and we tested it out at Wheaton Regional Park. There was a campground there, you could rent a site, and so we just saw, could we put up a tent, could we cook? It was just sort of a trial run. And I built this big box that was also collapsible. And it was big though, it was about 7 feet long, about 1.5 feet high with a big lid on it, and extended across the width of the car, the station wagon. And I strapped it to the metal bars that went across the station wagon. And then the tent was rolled up into a big ball sort of, no, like a big duffel bag. And that was strapped on the front of that bag. And we went to California, and I say we were going to be camping because we couldn't afford staying at motels and hotels. And, it just wasn't possible. When we were up in that trip, we drove, and it's nothing between here and Denver, really. And flat land, but I drove around with the box on top for about 2 weeks, and I was thinking of wind blowing. I did a lot of trial testing of things, but what I didn't realize was how much weight, because we filled the box up with clothes, the tent on the front, and I built another box, which was like a portable kitchen, which when you put the tailgate of the station wagon down, you pull this box out, and it had a big lid across the front which dropped down, hinged, and that became a work table. So and it had slots in it where we kept pepper and salt and pancake mix, and it was like a small kitchen. I didn't realize really how much preparation went into that. The problem which I didn't anticipate was the weight. When we got to rolling hills, at some point near the Rockies or near Las Vegas, I'm not sure, you would go up over a hill and I couldn't feel the front wheels on the road. And in effect, the car was slightly raising.
Oh, no.
And what was happening was the shock absorbers were getting worn due to the weight, and the wheel would go up from a bump and wouldn't come back down quickly. And that was the... So I went into a garage and they said you needed heavy duty shocks. So we lost a day on that, getting the car fixed. And when we got near, another thing, we got near the Rockies, the car motor started acting up, and I went into a garage and they said it's just the altitude. And if they adjusted the carburetor, that you would need to have it readjusted again later. And they said just try to do it with lower power. Well, going up some of the, as you got higher and higher, your floor was, the gas was right to the floor. But it made it up.
Made it up the hills?
Yeah, but we got halted. Another delay was a big boulder had rolled down the mountainside about 2-3 hours ahead of us and crushed the car. And a couple had jumped out of the car and tried to get into the back seat and get one of their children out of the car. And somehow or other the boulder hit the car and ended up killing both parents. But the child wasn't harmed. But the road was blocked. One, they had to get the boulder off the road, and the wreckage, and it was a narrow road going up into the mountain. But it was kind of spooky that big boulders can come rolling down on you. Well, in any event, we got up into the Rockies, and the campground was so high up, it had a tilt going down a slight grade into the campground, and car didn't have enough power to get out. And a couple of other people were having the same problem. So Eileen and the kids got out, and other campers were helping each other push the car, and each car would get up and you'd stop, and once you got up, go running back and help push the next person who had been helping you.
Right.
And this was in the redwoods, and there at night you could hear the bears at a nearby dump rummaging. In other words, garbage from the campground. You could hear the bears rummaging around, and they told you do not keep any food in the cars. The bears are active, and but we didn't have a problem. And we got out of the campground, down out of the Rockies, got near Las Vegas, but it was so dry we didn't have air conditioning, and our lips were all cracked. And we got into someplace near Las Vegas, and we wanted to go see a show, but we had to leave the kids. It was an adult showgirl thing. And we saw it, but we told the babysitter that we had hired, the hotel recommended one, a motel. And we mentioned there was a dog. She says, oh, I do a lot of dog babysitting, because you're not supposed to have a dog. And it was at that motel where Johnny wanted to go in the pool, and he just came and ran he didn't fall into the water, he just ran and kept going down right over his head. I mean, he just disappeared into the water, not diving, just running. I had to go in and pull him out. And I said, whoa. But then we got California, and it was to visit Eileen's sister, who was then living in Tahunga, which was outskirts of LA, up in the mountains, or hilly area. And we visited with them. And we took you guys to Disneyland, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, we went to Disneyland.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been the thing going there. And we were staying at national parks, state parks. We went north finally to Oregon, stayed at Crater National
I
Park.
remember that.
There was a lot of ashes everywhere. Got into everything, into the tent, into the food. There was like a volcanic pulvis material. We got up to Bend, Oregon, and literally Bend, you'd stop and then you started going back. Well, going back, we stayed saw Mount Rushmore, we stayed at other places, but not quite as thrilling. Out to Hoover Dam and did that. But altogether, we traveled approximately 10,000 miles. And when we got back, I said, we need a stronger motor car, so I bought probably within a year, a new station wagon with a big heavy V8. Of course, we never took a big trip like that. I never took
At least I wasn't on it.
No.
I know you all went up to Canada
Well,
with Johnny.
when we did the other trip out west with Eric, because Eric wasn't born then,
Right.
we had the dog with us. It was Johnny, you, Bonnie,
Really a dog.
and it was Sam, the beagle. It wasn't.
Beagles.
It wasn't Chiquita. Chiquita came much later. And at some point, we were in California, up in the gold country along a river. One of you got saying, Dad, I'm going to be sick. Well, there was no pull-off. I says, we'll roll down the window. No cars behind us. And Bonnie, I think it was, got sick and was throwing up out the window. Well, that got the other one, you, sick, and you started throwing out the other window.
I don't remember that.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Because I remember glancing in the rearview mirror to see if there's any cars behind me. And
I remember a dog.
it was, the camping was fun. We stayed at Idaho Falls. We had a picnic supper, and it turns out down below us a rodeo was going on, and we looked down into this natural amphitheater type of arrangement, and they were having a big rodeo with people coming on horseback with flags, and then there was cattle coming out of chutes and people wrestling the cattle to the ground, and all sorts of rodeo events. So it was a lot of unexpected things on the trip that were really fascinating. And you and Bonnie talked about the trip to Eric, I guess, and that was years later when he approached me about.
He wanted his trip out west.
He went out west.
I remember that.
In 2019, over 50 years later, my father hauled away the wood carrier he had made for the trip, thus closing out the story of our family trip out west.